Good evening, everybody. I'm Janelle, Mayor. So much for coming. We're so very happy to have you in our new store. First time welcome. If it's not, welcome back. I hope you're enjoying your new space as much as we just love it. One of the things that's really important to us here in the store and what this is all kind of ties into is what's called our mission, vision, values. I'll share those with you. Our mission is connecting people to nature. Our vision is to serve, educate, and create memorable experiences. And lastly, our values is together we fly. We couldn't do this without all the help of all the staff here that we have it for the Wild Birds, and we're very thankful for our team. So anyway, I would love to present our owner for the night of Hummingbirds and Orioles, how to attract them, Crinda Williams.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. How many of you is this your first Hummingbird and Oriole seminar? Oh, that is awesome because we've been doing, I think this is our 11th year. So I am Crinda. I began in this business, I think it was 2006 or 7. So I want to say about 17 years in the business. And this is our 11th annual seminar. This is the only seminar we've had regularly over the years until COVID. Um, you know what? I'm going to stop for a second. Can I, can you guys all hear me in the back? Should I go any louder? A little bit? Okay, you want to go a little louder? Thank you. And I usually start off by saying, I'm terrified. I do not like speaking in public. This being the 11th one, I feel like it's a little bit easier, but I still have lots of notes. All right, is that any better back there? Okay, if we need to go up anymore, do this and I'll just try to talk louder. And if that doesn't work, we'll turn it up wherever they turn it up over there. I'm not even sure what they do. Okay, so I don't really have everybody kind of gathered around, but I want to thank the staff and our friends that always show up to help. AJ's our web guy. Kim is just all around one of the best workers we've ever had. We got Tina, Soraya, Trudy. My son Pierce is here to help. You guys might recognize him from the past. He now owns his own business, which is that nice purple van outside, and he will do mobile car detailing, and he is awesome. Shameless plug there. Did I miss? Oh, and Janelle, who introduced, she's our event coordinator and also works retail. We all wear a lot of hats around here. So I'm very blessed to have the team that I have, to where all I have to focus on is what I want to say, and they do everything else. So it's really awesome. So I want to say thank you to the staff. So we're just going to get started with I'm going to do some fun facts first. I realize you guys are all here to probably learn the tips and tricks of attracting and keeping hummingbirds and orioles, but I like to start off with some fun facts too. And before you leave, I do have tips for attracting hummingbirds and oriole pamphlets up here. I did not write it, but it's all great information. And then a list of plants that you can plant or that you can have in your yard that would also attract them. So there are actually 365 different species of hummingbirds in the world, and they are only found in the Americas. They used to be in Europe a long time ago, and they have no idea why they're no longer in Europe, but they just aren't. So they're only in the Americas, and only 15 of them are in the United States. And actually, only one of them, from what I think I remember, flies east in the eastern United States, and that's the ruby-throated. So of the 15 that are in the United States, the most common would be the ruby-throated, Anna's, black-chinned. I think that's what you see in Colorado. Rufus would be maybe the only other hummingbird you would see here besides the ruby-throated, and then Allen's. Now, all of those you can find in Nebraska, but most of them are in the Panhandle. Where we are here, we get mostly eastern birds, but western Nebraska gets a lot of really cool birds. There's probably not a lot of people out there, but there's a lot of cool birds out there. And then Arizona has the most hummingbird species in the United States. There's 300 in South America, 50 in Central America. Let me see. The ruby-throated is the only species regularly seen over most of the eastern United States. I thought that was feedback. They are the only hummer found east of the Great Plains except for the rufous. So rufous, I think when they kind of get off their path, you might see them here just a little bit. Okay, so then that is what the rufous looks like versus the ruby-throated. And this is a ruby-throated at my feeder in my yard that we actually got a pretty decent picture of. Hummingbirds are incredibly tuned in. They remember flowers that they visited, and they know exactly when they last ate from that flower, and they know when to come back around because they have to, the flowers have to refill in their nectar. They can remember feeder locations for years. Have you ever forgotten to put your hummingbird feeder out and then the hummingbird's there looking for it where it should have been sitting? That's how I remember to put my hummingbird feeder out because I'm terrible. I just put my Oriole feeder out today because my Merlin app said I had one in the yard. I didn't see him, but I think that they're pretty close. So they also keep track of bloom peaks and remember which flowers they visited. And I thought this was interesting. A large portion of the hummingbird's brain is occupied by, the only way I can say this is exactly phonetically how it looks. It's called the hippocampus, and it's an area of the brain dedicated to learning and spatial memory. So that is the bulk of a hummingbird's brain. So they fly the same migration path, they visit the same yards, they nest in the same yards. That is why it's very hard for somebody to attract a hummingbird for the very first time, because usually hummingbirds come back to where they nested and found food before. So when you're trying to attract your first hummingbird, it takes a lot of patience. It can take a couple of years. The very biggest key would be getting it out as of yesterday. So April 15th would be pretty much the first sighting that you would normally see. I've never seen one that early, but I know that there are some sightings right now. But the hummingbirds that are coming right now are a lot of the ones that are looking for new homes and new yard to live in. I'm not really sure how they deem that somebody has already taken that yard. If the new ones come first, I'm not really sure, but I do know that where I live, my hummingbirds were there before I was. So I didn't actually do a whole lot to attract them. Some people, they just come to your yard because you're in the flight pattern, the migration path. And some people just work really hard at saying, hey, and I'll tell you some of the best ways to get a hummingbird to go, oh, I'm going to check out that yard. All right, so fun facts. The smallest hummingbird in the world is the smallest bird in the world is a hummingbird, and it's lighter than a dime. So it's the smallest bird in the world is called a bee hummingbird. It's endemic to Cuba. It's only 2 inches long, and it weighs about 1.5 grams. A few other fun facts. I am going to make sure that hummingbirds do not mate for life. They don't even stay together to raise babies. Female does all the nest building, incubating, and carrying. I'm not sure why I'm getting feedback. Am I too close to something? Okay. Female does all the nest building, incubating, and carrying, while the male mates with any hummingbird that it can attract. These are not romantic birds. So, and it made me wonder, I wonder if there are romantic birds, like if there are birds out there that really, I like the doves or what you think would be romantic birds. Okay, so to make sure I'm on the right thing here. Okay. Ruby-throated hummingbirds' heartbeats about 1,200 times a minute compared to us is like 60 to 100 times a minute. And most of them beat their wings 60 to 80 times per second. So it's like one Mississippi, that was 80 beats of the wing. Even more amazing, some hummingbirds can enter a state of torpor, reducing their heart rate to as few as like 50 beats per minute to conserve energy and in the cold. So a lot of what a hummingbird does, they don't fly around and eat all day. A lot of their day is just sitting and perching and watching their food source and fighting off whoever tries to get to their food source. But they do conserve a lot of energy. They can put themselves into kind of a hibernation state where they're using minimal amounts of energy. That could be like when they're here now and we have a freeze overnight and people are like, oh gosh, the hummingbirds are going to die. Hummingbirds won't die as long as there's food available to them. They can handle the cold as long as there's food available. This is just a fun fact. Their flexible shoulder joints allow their wings to rotate 180 degrees, which enables them to fly backwards. And I believe they're one of the only birds that flies backwards as well. And another fun fact, they migrate about 500 miles nonstop over the Gulf. It's about an 18-hour flight over the Gulf, and they do that in less than a day. So it's pretty cool. This is the distribution map. So for your ruby-throated breeding, they're basically the whole eastern side of the United States. And then, well, okay, and then this is where they are now. So we just pulled this up. So we have a few sightings close to us. And has anybody here seen or know anybody who has seen a hummingbird yet? Okay. I always feel like we get a few early sightings, and I walked outside and I thought I heard something buzz me, and it was it was a wasp. Lots of those. And then but two times I was like, oh, is that a hummingbird? And I looked and it was a dragonfly. So I would imagine in 20 or 30 more years, I'll think they're all hummingbirds. So I don't know for sure if there's a lot of hummingbirds here right now, but they usually show up within this week. Especially the ones looking for new homes. So this is where they are right now. And I've always said that where we are, we're kind of in the middle of the United States. And if we're too cool here, they tend to kind of migrate, follow the jet stream around where it's a little bit warmer over here. And then they'll end up way up here sometimes before we see them in Omaha. And then when they migrate back south, they come straight down because our weather is fabulous. So most people I've always said about 70-30. I would say about 70% of our 70% of our customers act like they see them more in end of July, August, and September. And that is because that's when they're coming back through and going south. You also want to make sure you keep feeders out during that time, because a new hummingbird that is born this year will remember every stop on the way down to Texas, wherever they're going to end up. And they might remember your yard for the next year when they come back next year looking for a new place to breed. And they're singular migratory birds. They don't migrate together. So even a hummingbird that's born this year, he's on his own. I mean, parents are like, you're out of here, fly the 18 hours on your own and good luck. And I would say most hummingbirds die in the first year of life, probably because of that. Hummingbirds visit hundreds of flowers every day. And actually, I was going to talk about this first and then the flowers. Has anybody ever found a hummingbird's nest? They really, really like to make their nests it's almost like the fork of a tree like this. If you've ever seen, they used to sell hummingbird nest helpers where you could hang something and make it easy for a hummingbird to make a nest, and it kind of looked like this. They love to make their nest right in the fork of a tree. Their nest is about the size of a walnut, and the material they use is spider silk, soft plant down, and lichens. I think I learned how to say that last year, lichens. And they'll lay 2 eggs, smaller than jelly beans. It's really, really cool. If you've never seen that in person, you can go on, I think you could probably Google live hummingbird nest, and there's Anna's hummingbird nest out in California. It's very popular. It's widely known. Watching that mama feed the babies is like watching the drills that go down into when they're drilling. I mean, she looks like she's going to stab right through the hummingbird. It's pretty amazing. It's pretty cool. So this is always cool to me. Hummingbirds fly like a helicopter. It hovers, flies backwards, forwards, up, down, sideways. Flies like an airplane, 25 to 30 miles per hour, and it can dive 50 to 60 miles per hour. Flies like Top Gun. It can go from 0 to top speed almost instantly. And they're long-haul transporters. They will migrate more than 2,000 miles twice a year. And they do this basically for anywhere from 5 to 9 years. A male hummingbird is known to kind of live till they're about 5, and females live to like 7 to 9 years. So they live longer. I'm not quite sure why, other than, I don't know. You'd think he'd live longer because she does most of the work. So I don't understand that. I'll get back to you next year on that one. I'll figure it out. Love these. They don't just go to your bird baths. They'll go to a mist. When I'm out power washing the deck, they like to come and play in the mist. And we do have some, I don't think I grabbed it for the table though. We do have what they call an easy mister. You hook your hose into it, kind of hook it into a tree and just turn it on, and it just sprays out a mist. They love that. Their tongue is twice the length of their beak, and it wraps around their skull. So when their tongue comes out, it's coming from underneath their eyeball. out their beak. And then also their tongue is forked. I mean, this is insane to me, but that way I just don't understand it. So, but their tongue is forked. They don't just eat nectar, of course. They eat fruit flies and spider eggs, and I think we get into a little bit more of that. Um, the tongues are fringed and forked to lick nectar, and they lap it 12 times per second. If you've ever had a hummingbird feeder hanging there and you're watching them through your binoculars, you can see their tongue go in and out. It's pretty cool. Their tongues are very long. So if you've got a big hummingbird feeder and you're like, how is their tongue going to get to that? They make it happen. Okay. They will visit hundreds of flowers a day. The red flowers fill up faster. They have about 19 to 20% sugar level. And so red, orange, and yellow flowers that are higher in sugar levels, I think that's why those might be their favorite colors. But it's really the human bias that says hummingbird feeders need to be red. I think that that was a marketing thing that they did a long time ago. Hummingbird feeders can be orange, they can be blue, they can be, especially if you have hummers in your yard already. We kind of say when you're starting out, put something big and red out there, because I think there's a lot of red flowers in nature. And I also heard that birds are attracted to colors that are much brighter than what's in nature. So, I mean, even like a red that's not really like the red flowers, but it's a deeper, brighter red. They're just really attracted to bright, bright colors. Then I wanted to say, so flowers are the main food source and they play an important role in pollination. By pollinating thousands of different plants, including wildflowers, they stabilize fragile soils and for fires and landslides. I thought that was interesting too. Rapid fire hummingbird facts, and then we'll get to the good stuff, which is just kind of what we would suggest that you would put in your yard. The average length of a hummingbird is 3.5 inches, weighs less than 2 dimes. Their brains are the size of a BB. That's interesting to me since they can remember so much. Most hummingbirds die in the first year. After that first year, if they make it past the first year, they obviously expectancy increases significantly. You can find hummingbirds year-round in Florida, Arizona, Southern California, Southern Texas. They have no sense of smell. That's odd to me as well, because they will not drink moldy nectar, or if it's even going bad. It's like, if they can't smell, I don't understand how they know that, but they do. So the oldest hummingbird on record is 9 years and 1 month, and most females live about 7 years, and males rarely live past 5. Interesting. So we're going to talk about some of our favorite things, and I'm hoping to get this all recentered next time and not have this big thing in the middle. So I'm sorry, I'll try to do my best to hold things up. There are 3 different styles of hummingbird feeders. You have a disc style in which the feeding ports are above the nectar. So this is like 0 chance of leaking because your feeding ports are above the nectar. This is a brand new one that we just got in, and it has a flower that comes off the top so that you can refill from the top without having to take the top off. And it comes with the built-in moat. You can put water in there to keep the ants from getting in there. Another disc style that we have, all of our aspect feeders are pretty much, I think, disc style feeders, where your port is above the nectar. Very popular, and this company does like a lifetime guarantee on their feeders. The second type of feeder would be like a jar feeder, and that's where your nectar is above your ports. Never had a problem with these guys leaking. I did have one different style feeder I brought to Colorado that worked for me here, and when I was up at, I don't know, 9,000, it was like 20, I don't remember what it was, yeah. But I think because of the altitude, it started pushing nectar out of the holes. So that's the only time I've ever had a problem with one of these styles leaking was at the upper altitudes. So this is probably by far our best-selling hummingbird feeder that we have. And I like it because I like the wide mouth because that's way easier for cleaning the jar out. That's my favorite. You can put it in the dishwasher. When the first few years we were selling these, we realized that the dishwasher was kind of melting the glue that's between this red top and the glass. So I kind of say hand wash this and you can dishwash this. When he created the bottom of this feeder, he created a baffling system that when done exactly like the instructions say, which is super easy, it keeps the nectar at such a low level that bees and wasps cannot smell it. So they're not attracted to it. It also doesn't leak. So one of the main reasons that insects are attracted to your nectar is because they find it on the ground. It's been leaking on the ground, and they just are smart enough to know just to go up, and they're a pain when it comes to these feeders. So I will show you in a little bit how to keep those guys away. We do have, so this has pretty much no red on it. It's pink and purple. It's supposed to kind of mimic a fuchsia plant, and it has the top comes off, so it's a top fill. So that's another wider. It's not a very small hole. This one it's popular, and I think it's because it's a lower priced one. I think these are like $26.99. They're awesome. They really are awesome, and people love them. I just don't know. I don't know. So I think that I don't mind these feeders. I like it better in the smaller version because I know I can get a brush down in there and get that clean pretty good. And so the ones I'm showing you right here, the disc, the jars, so far, these are your like highly functional feeders. I would suggest having, if you have a decent amount of hummingbird activity in your yard, I would suggest more than one feeder. You can have multiple families eating out of a feeder in your yard, but you'll always have that dominant hummingbird that just sits there and watches all of your feeders. So I try to say put 2 or 3 feeders out and hide them from each other to where there's not one place that a dominant hummingbird can sit and dive bomb. Have you ever seen hummingbirds dive bomb each other off? They are horrible. And the reason they do that is because when they picked your yard for nesting, they've looked around and they're like, okay, I can raise 2 babies in this yard. And then others try to come in and they're like, yeah, no, there's not enough for you, not enough for you. So they're very territorial. Even after their babies are born, they like dive bomb their babies off the feeders. So I do suggest if you maybe at least having 2 and then putting them where the hummingbird can't see both at the same time. This is also another kind of disc style. This is hand painted. This top opens, fill up your feeder, super easy to clean. And then so we did the disc style, the jar style, and then you kind of have what we call the decorative. I mean, they're maybe a little bit like this one will glow in the dark. It has some straws in there. It's a cute feeder. It's maybe cuter than it is functional. I mean, it is functional, but it's going to be a little bit harder to clean and keep up with. But that's okay. And I thought I had one more decorative. Maybe I considered this a decorative. That's also a disc style. You can also get put a hummingbird feeder on your window. They will come right up to your window. They don't have a lot of predators because they're so fast. Nobody can really catch up with them. Not even cats. People say, "Oh, I have a cat that hangs out under mine all the time." It's like the hummingbirds are used to going down to flowers, so they're used to kind of watching their backs. So a hummingbird right on the window is perfect. When I say a functional feeder, I always like to. If somebody says, I want 3 hummingbird feeders, I'll sell you one really good one that's going to be around for 15 years. I mean, I've probably had one of these over 13 years. And then I'll say, then do another little supplemental one. It doesn't have to be as big and as like functional. It can just be a supplemental small one. And I love our mason jar hummingbird feeder for that. You just unscrew the top and fill it. This is also a favorite of I just kind of asked a few people around here to bring up their favorite hummingbird feeders. It's a little more decorative, but I don't know. I like the decorative ones out there if I'm willing to do the work to clean them. So I love that. And so I'm just giving you examples of some of the supplemental feeders. This one would be another one. So kind of a lower cost. You'll pay maybe in the $12 to $20 range for the supplemental feeders. And one of the reasons I like this is because it's been $29.99 for 10 years. They haven't changed the price on this. I'm not quite sure why, because I think they could get more money out of that. But so that's one of my favorites. And then one of my favorite supplemental feeders would be the mason jar, for sure. And just recently, we met up with a company that created the copper hummingbird feeder, and you can hang this from your window we have a suction cup hanger hook. And you just fill this up with nectar, and then you have one to put in your refrigerator for refills. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that okay. I'm sorry, I lost all my stuff. Okay, that's Orioles. All right, so we're going to go to how to feed them, what to feed them. Um, you can do your own nectar, which is 1 part sugar to 4 parts water. I would suggest boiling it. If you get anything that you buy from the store, you should not have to boil. So, but you can absolutely do nectar as cheap as just putting sugar in water and making it yourself. We sell a lot of ready-to-use nectar. It's just you just pour and go, and this is $11.99, so it's not too. That's not too bad of a price. I am very, I won't say lazy, but after I've worked all day, I don't want to go home and make nectar. I just want to take this out of my refrigerator and fill my feeders. Or we have powder that you can mix water into. You will not have to boil this either. The difference between these two, this is literally, I believe, just a bag of sugar, and then they tell you how much water to put in it. And it's $3.99. This one, the difference with this one and this one has what they call Nectar Defender in it. And Nectar Defender was created by the guy that created the crystals in the cat litter that absorb moisture. And we have a product called Feeder Fresh that you can put in with your seed that absorbs the water, that absorbs moisture, especially for your finch feeders. He created this for the hummingbird nectar, and it's an enzyme, it's all natural, that makes your hummingbird nectar last twice as long. So if you're using something like this, you don't have to change your feeders for about 2 weeks. And I have tested this. I've tested it in Florida. It went beyond 2 weeks because it says it would extend it by 3 times. So it's like if you're going to clean your feeders once a week, that would mean 3 weeks out there. There's something in me that won't let it go past 2 weeks. So, but that can be very helpful if you tend to leave your nectar out there for too long and you know it's bad. Maybe just spend a little bit of money, and you can put this in your own sugar water if you make your own nectar at home. Moving on to where to place your feeders. In my opinion, the best place to place your hummingbird feeder is where you're going to see it. There's no perfect spot in your yard. It would be nice if it could be a shadier spot. So if you already have hummingbirds that come to your yard, you do not have to, you do not have to worry so much about this. You can kind of hide your feeders, especially so what we usually say is if you're just now trying to attract them with them out in the open. So put it out in the sun, put it out in the open where when they fly over, they see something kind of like a stop sign. This would be on top of your feeder. So basically hang like this. And this as a stop sign would show your hummingbird something to come down and kind of investigate. Now, if you didn't have this on it, that's fine. The red flowers on here, but if you've never attracted a hummingbird, you want to try to attract them with something big and bold in your yard, whether it is a red scarf that you attach to your shepherd's hook, or I have people who zip tie fake flowers to their shepherd's hook because it kind of, I guess if I was a hummingbird and I saw flowers there, I'd go to it. But if you already have established hummingbirds in your yard, you can put them underneath an eave. If you shade them, it's going to make your nectar last longer. The sun ages the nectar pretty well. And so that's why having it out in the open, but putting it underneath something, sometimes people who've been feeding the birds for a while have a lot of this stuff just sitting in their garage they could take out and use. Especially if you have hummingbirds already, this doesn't need to be red, but anything that would shade it for you. And once you get them to come to the feeder, if you then want to kind of put them underneath a porch, or because I have a couple that go underneath my porch, but they've been there for years, so the hummingbirds are used to that. So there's not any magic place to place your hummingbird feeders. You can feed on the window, you can feed right outside your window, you can feed with all of your other birds. If you guys have ever seen the live cam that's above the register, I probably have 9 or 10 feeders out there. And this time of year, I just take 2 of those down and I put a hummingbird and an oriole feeder up there, and they feed with all the other birds. And in my opinion, no problem. That could be different in your yard, but in my yard, I kind of force them to all eat together so I can have them all on camera. All right, so then I did say place your feeders. 2 or 3 around your yard. Check out the hummingbird migration map. Has anybody here followed them on the map? So if you go to hummingbirdcentral.com, I think it is, it's not a very easy website to navigate. I kept going to like the wintering map and I couldn't find it, but you should be able to find, that's where we found, where AJ helped me get that map on there. So that's as of today, but you'll, as the next week or so, if you check out that map, you'll see them kind of going all over the United States. So that's exciting. All right. I just started talking and I forgot about my notes, and I'm so proud of myself because I said all of this already. Patience, that was one thing I should have said. Once you start trying to track hummingbirds, it might take a couple of years for them to remember that they picked stuff up in your yard. And you could have hummingbirds coming and eat out of your feeders, and you may never know it because you could have migrators that are migrating south, which they start about September, August. They start their trek back south. You could have a couple of hummingbirds that pick up nectar out of your yard and you're like, ah, give up, I didn't get any this year. Then they might remember your yard the next year. So put it back out the next year. I always say at least try between April 15th and May 1st. At least if you're going to try, and I'll put it out in my yard and I'll know that they don't really show up for me until May. But I only put a little bit in my feeder. That way, if I'm dumping it out in a week or so, I'm not frustrated by filling it back up. People will fill it all the way up and then they're mad they're wasting all that nectar. So when you're trying between right now and May 1st, you don't have to fill it up all the way. Just put a little bit in there. You're not going to get a ton of activity right now. You're going to get the scouts. So very few are here right now. But then save filling up your feeder for August and September because it can get nuts. I mean, they will empty one of these in a day for me, which I don't know. I was unheard of before I actually built up, I think, my population. Okay, so then I said later we're going to talk about some plants and flowers that will help you with your hummingbirds. Did I? Oh, no, I didn't. Oh, I didn't do as good of a job as I thought I did. Sorry. Ants. If you have ants that come to your feeder, we have ant moats that you can attach. It comes with a little hook on the side. Attach it to the top of your feeder, fill this up with water. When the ants go down, I've had a few people say they built a bridge and crossed the water. If they ever do that for you, 1 drop of Dawn dish soap in your water and they can no longer build a bridge. So this is a great finch water. Finches love sitting on top of this, and this is why I don't use these because I have so many finches. They drink all the water out of it every day, so I'm always filling it up for the finches. So I use a gel, and this is a gel that's a cinnamon oil gel, and all I do is I put it around. You literally could even put it around this little thing, but I'll put it around my pole so when the ants climb up, they just won't cross the gel. They don't like the cinnamon oil for some reason. If it's pretty shaded, one application of the gel will last all season. And the third thing I have was this is an ant guard. You can put it above your feeder, and it's got cinnamon. I think it's like a essential oil cinnamon smell to it, and I think they just stay away from it. No need to fill it with anything. It just works. It's magic. It's magic. It just works. I don't understand. I've even tried to figure out how that works, and it's just magic. I think they don't like cinnamon. Ants don't like cinnamon, so bee repellent. This can be sprayed right on your feeder, and you can do it a couple times a day if you want to. It's an all-natural, and it also has, it repels wasp, hornet. It doesn't hurt anybody, they don't like it. Stinging insects and ants. And it's got a bunch of essential oils in it, like eucalyptus, peppermint, geranium, cinnamon. So I guess bees don't like cinnamon either. So that's some good ways to keep the insects off your hummingbird feeders. I just want to quick mention, this is a new product we got in. I know everybody's probably seen the bird cameras out there that are showing, I'll hold it up. There we go. It's called Beak View. I mean, you fill your feeder up with, does anybody here listen to Boomer Radio? Okay, so Dave Wingert has one of these. He talks about it all the time on there. Fill it up with food, and that captures them as they're eating, and then it sends you have a northern cardinal at your feeder. It sends you something that identifies the bird for you. And we just got the hummingbird attachments in. So you can get, if you have a camera like this, or you buy a camera like this, you can feed your hummingbirds, and the hummingbird videos are super cute. as well. I'm excited. I haven't set mine up yet, but I'm excited too. So I just wanted to talk about that before we move on to Orioles. Janelle, at the end of this, will, okay, we're still doing okay. Janelle is going to be talking about plants and flowers for your hummingbirds for your yard at the end. So I'm going to zip through the Oriole stuff because I know you guys are all here for the hummingbird stuff, right? That's what I feel like you guys all showed up for the hummingbird stuff. But how many people have never had an Oriole in their yard? Okay. And I would venture to say probably a lot of you have Orioles in your yard and just have never seen them. So they hang out like 90 feet up in the trees because that's where they have their nests and that's where I mean, they literally eat, have babies and just raise their babies up there. They will not come down to the bird feeders unless you have something that would attract them, like something orange. So if they come down, if you have something like this out in your yard, they're coming down to investigate it because one of their favorite things to eat are like mulberries. So if you have mulberry bushes, they're bushes, right? Not trees. If you have mulberry bushes in your yard, you probably, well, or an Oriole would love to hang out in your yard. So we're starting with Orioles. Population of Orioles is about 12 million. There are it's when I get close to that thing. That sound happens when I get too close over here. I don't know if I'm, okay. I'll stay away. Y'all just look over here. So 12 million Orioles, 9 species in North America. The female Oriole will anchor the nest firmly to the fork in the slender upper branches of a tree. And they do this. This is what the Oriole's nest looks like. This fell in my yard a couple years ago. So this will be hanging from the edge of a branch at the like 90 feet in the air. And you're like, that is never going to hang on. And it does. They put a lot into that nest and they will only use it for one season. So once that's done, they'll recycle their nest. So they'll come back and use pieces of that for their new nest, but they won't have babies again in that nest. So Baltimore Orioles often nest in American elm. So if you have any of these trees in your yard, it's likely you've got a good yard for them. American elms, but they will build in other trees like maple and cottonwoods. All American Orioles are actually members of the blackbird family. I hate to disappoint all of you guys, but they're just blackbirds with a pretty coat on. And I actually think the only reason they're called Orioles is, I think we'll get there, is Lord Baltimore. Wait, I don't know where the name Oriole came from. Hold on. Yeah, we'll get there. Okay. So this is mainly what you're going to see. This is also my yard, male and female Oriole. They're eating mealworms there. And then, has anybody gotten the orchard Oriole in their yard? I kind of think they look like robins at first when I first see them. So that's male and female orchard. The female orchard Oriole, she is like all yellow. It's really cool. 30 species in the world, only 9, and only 3 in Nebraska. I think we get the orchard, the Baltimore, and I think is it the Bullocks? That's more Western though, I believe. Male shows up first, kind of like the hummingbirds. They send scouts out. So the males will show up first, claim the territory, and then they start singing for their mate. And a lot of times if they have a mate before they show up to your yard, they have a specific song. And when they sing it, she knows where he is. So during breeding, orioles voraciously feed on caterpillars. I thought this was interesting. Even hairy ones that other birds avoid. They feed on insects and spiders. They forage while moving throughout the tops of the trees, gleaning from leaves and branches, and even picking insects from spider webs. By feeding on large quantities of larvae and insects, the orioles are protecting the trees from extensive damage, providing a valuable ecological service. They are fond of fruit. They're fond of really dark fruit. So like mulberries, black cherries, and they'll visit your feeder if you have oranges and grape jelly out. I've always told people if you don't think you're going to get them in your yard, don't buy a feeder, just buy some oranges, cut them in half, put them out on a tray just like that, or skewer out half of it and fill it up with grape jelly. And then you have an orange, and then you have another orange half with grape jelly in it. And I can't tell you how many times people will call and say, I did that, and half an hour later I had Orioles coming down and eating them. So if they're, especially by about the first week of May, if they're in your yard and you put something orange out there, you're going to hear them and you're going to see them pretty quickly. Some fun facts about the Orioles. This just shows their distribution map. There's really not, I can't find an active map on where they are. People don't report those the way they do the hummingbirds. But this is the breeding residence. So they literally come here to have babies. So when they get here, they're like hungry, hungry, hungry for the first 2 weeks, 3 weeks that they're here. They're eating. I think it's like they're trying to make up for the migration that just happened, and they're building up their energy again. So if you've had Orioles before, you know for the first 3 weeks, it is like a jar of jelly a day and oranges and nectar. And then it kind of backs off a little bit as they start to have babies. So we'll get into a little bit of that. But Orioles winter in Florida, the Caribbean, Central America, and the northern tip of South America. Keep feeders out until early fall. A lot of people say they kind of disappear in July. If you keep your feeders out, they will come back. I mean, they disappear, and the reason they don't come back is because they're off feeding babies for so long. You guys have given up on them, so you bring your feeders in, and when they're done feeding their babies and ready to bring the babies to the feeder, there's no more feeder out there. And I understand that because I do the same thing. And last year, I forced myself to keep my feeders out there no matter what, and they came back after 2 months. So I wouldn't give up. Plus, you have and I'll show you some other jelly eating birds as well. So even if your Orioles do leave, you can still feed other birds with that grape jelly. Providing water is great. If Orioles love water, they love running water. I put down in here that this is what their nests look like hanging in the trees, and it does look dangerous. And Lord Baltimore, he was an English nobleman, founder of Maryland from England. His crest was yellow and black, and that's when they saw the yellow and black bird, they called it the Lord Baltimore bird. And then for some reason, that morphed into Baltimore Orioles. So that was just a quick fun fact. When spring rolls around, Orioles need a lot of energy as they come to the end of their migration. To satisfy the need, they love eating sugary, high energy foods. Provide this by placing nectar feeders, jelly, and fruit feeders around your yard. Later in the summer, once they don't require as much energy, you can switch to protein. We'll talk a little bit about that. It may take up to several seasons to attract your first one. Again, it's like a stop sign, just orange. If you have anything bright orange, I've said go to Goodwill and buy those construction orange t-shirts and tie. I mean, you only need it out there long enough to attract your Orioles, and you can take the shirt in. I know it'll look tacky out there, but if you're serious, put it out there, and if you have them, they will come. Different style feeders to feed the Orioles. We have just a fruit feeder where you cut your oranges and skewer it on there. We have, I think I might, I thought that went out. Okay, our most popular feeder we have for Orioles, and I think a little bit of is how bright the orange is. And this will feed 2 cups of jelly, and then you slice your orange in half and it goes upside down on both sides there. Second to that one would be this one where it's 1 jar of jelly, and then you have room for 4 oranges on there. And this one's new. We've never had a 4-cup Oriole feeder. And actually, our distributor is starting to make his own feeders. So they came up with this. So it's 4 cups, and then you can put oranges on these 2 on each side. Some people only feed nectar. And this is a Oriole nectar feeder. The ports are rubber, so they can just stick their beaks in there. A lot of you'll see them try to eat out of your hummingbird feeders, but their beaks are too big to get in a lot of those holes. Some of the hummingbird feeder holes are bigger, but some of them aren't. So this is a good one for just nectar. This is a good one for nectar. And then you see how they put an orange in the middle? They unscrewed that. They unscrewed this, put an orange on there, and then screwed it back in. You can put nectar in the bottom, jelly in these ports. We always called this our starter feeder, because you could do 3 in 1. You could do the orange, the nectar, and the jelly. But if you end up with a ton of Orioles, you're going to want more than just this. Actually, my first year that I put this out, I got so many Orioles. I ended up taking this off, gluing it to the bottom, and I filled this whole thing with jelly, and that's what they ate out. So that was, yeah, I wasn't expecting to get that much action on my Oriole feeder. You can also feed them in the window. They're a little less, they're reactive if they see somebody on the other side of the window. So I used to have this in my kitchen window, and every time I'd walk in the kitchen, they'd fly away because I'd scare them. But you can feed them on the window. These are pretty popular. This one is 2 glass cups, and these are popular for places that if you put this out there, the wind would just take your bowl away. I know some people live on the lake, and they come out and just see this with no cups in it, but the glass holds it in pretty well. So high wind, I would suggest something like this. And then this is just jelly. In my opinion, Orioles come into town and they're ready for jelly and oranges when they first get here, even some nectar. And then it dies down. After a few weeks, they don't eat my oranges anymore, but they absolutely still eat the jelly. And then they stop eating my nectar. So it's like we go into phases of we feed everything, and then we take the oranges away, and then we stop with the nectar, and then we stay with the jelly. When That's all before they have babies. Once they have babies, they pretty much go strictly to protein to feed the babies. Most birds do. So then you'll see have you ever been feeding the Orioles and it's like crazy, 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 and then it's just like, where did they go? That's because they're probably hatching their first babies, and then they have to spend all day long looking for insects to feed this nest full of babies. So what I suggest at that point is that I end up taking the oranges away, only doing 1 cup of jelly. That's great grape jelly, by the way. And the other cup, I put mealworms. So I can I can encourage them to come down from 90 feet if I have something that they could, protein. Protein is really what they're looking for. They'll have a bite of jelly, but they go crazy over the mealworms. And we have live mealworms. You guys are free to come and touch and feel these if you want later. Or you can do the dried mealworms. And if you do dried mealworms here, save your buckets because we refill them for almost less than half the cost, the original cost. So I would highly suggest to keep your Orioles coming once they have babies to put mealworms out there. And so you can buy our all natural grape jelly here, the birdberry jelly, or you can go to Sam's or Walmart or wherever you buy your jelly and just get grape jelly. Any kind of grape jelly is good. My raccoons come every single night. So I like to fill up all my feeders at night so it's all fresh in the morning. And then I'd wake up in the morning, there'd be no jelly out there. I had 6 cups of jelly out there waiting for them for the morning, all empty. So my raccoons have found me and they love the grape jelly. So I started sprinkling in some of our squirrel sauce. And this was actually a suggestion from a customer about 15 years ago, maybe. And she says, "Oh, I just put that flaming squirrel sauce in mine." I'm like, "Ugh, my Orioles aren't going to eat hot pepper jelly," but they do. So birds have they're missing something in their sensory. They don't process heat. So this is just a non-event for them. Raccoons, however, are a little bit different. So I had this full of jelly. I put 2 drops of that on top of it because there's like an oil in it too, so it just spreads. You don't have to use that much. And I watched my raccoon go up to it, and he pulled the whole feeder to him, and he stuck his nose in it, and then he went, and then he turned around and he ate something else. So people are like, "That's mean. You're gonna hurt the raccoons." They took all this off the market years ago because a lot of animals have a lot of rights, and they did not want to hurt any of the animals. And so people always say, "Is this safe?" And I said, they took it off the market and they put it back on. So it's safe, because if it was not safe, there's a huge population of people out there to make sure this was off the market. So, and then I moved to suet. When you feed the mealworms, I kind of suggest doing suet with the mealworms because it's a source of fat and protein for the birds. It's a pretty quick source of fat and protein. So I mix this in with my mealworms. Or if you have a suet feeder, they will eat other flavors of suet, but there is orange flavored suet for this time of year. And we have plenty of that. I didn't do my job and I didn't buy more of this. So this is our only bag of this, but if anybody's interested, there will be more coming next week. My daughter just had a baby. That's my excuse. I have not technically been in the store very much this week. I also say place your feeders out in the open so that as they fly over, they can find something bright orange. Because if they flew over your yard and they were going somewhere else and they stopped and you had this stocked full with jelly, nectar, and oranges, they'd probably not go any further. They'd stay in your yard if you had the right trees. Now, if you don't have the right trees in your yard, that doesn't mean you can't attract them during baby time. It just means if you have them nesting in your yard, you absolutely are going to get them to come down and eat those mealworms and have some jelly. But if they're breeding a mile away, they're not really going to go a mile for jelly. But they will for protein. They can find worms pretty easily. And I don't know if they take the worms back to the baby's nest and feed the baby, or if it's just for them and they're going out and finding natural stuff for their baby. And I did say try an orange if you don't want to get a feeder at first. Just try an orange and see if they come. I think I said this before. For the nectar. All of the bags that say Oriole nectar will say 1-to-6 ratio. I've never had luck with 1-to-6 ratio. I've only had so when I do 1-to-6 for the Oriole and I do 1-to-4 for the Hummingbirds, my Orioles are always trying to eat out of my Hummingbird feeder. I personally think they like what the Hummingbirds are eating, so the sweeter the better. Okay, so I said get a nectar feeder so they can fit their beak in it. We talked about that. Hanging your feeder near a bird bath, especially with a bubbler, because they love moving water. And as far as cleaning, so I'm going to end on this. Cleaning any of this, it's really just a sink full of really hot water. The hotter the better. Put some Dawn dish soap in there and let it soak for about 30 minutes. And then you just take any kind of a soft bristle brush and scrub. If it's more than that, I forgot that I left one of my feeders out. And I think when I brought it in, it was kind of black. That's okay. We soaked it, didn't work. And then I used bleach. That worked a little bit better. And then I soaked it again. And then I did vinegar. I did all kinds of stuff, but I was not throwing that feeder away. And I was able to salvage it. But in general, when you're cleaning it out every week or once every couple weeks, really it's just Dawn dish soap and hot water. If it's been out there for months and you forgot to bring it in, then I would do something a little more aggressive. Rinse with hot water. You can sanitize it by doing a solution of 1 part white vinegar to 4 parts hot water. And I would say clean your feeders at least the jelly for sure, these guys once a week. The jelly, I just take my cups in and clean the cups out once a week. So otherwise it doesn't get too bad at all. I like having the right tools. So whether it's Hummingbirds or the Oriole feeders, these guys, like the little mascara brushes, those are awesome. That's pretty much what these are like. But I have several different feeders, so I have all different kinds of brush sizes for all of my feeders. And it's like when you're working in the garage and guys say, I have to have the right tools. These are the right tools to clean your feeders. And it's always so much easier to get the job done when you have the right tools. So I forgot about my presentation because I got to talking again. All of your jelly-eating birds. I had my Merlin app out today, and I have a gray catbird in my yard. And they will eat the oranges and the jelly. Your gray catbird, the robins. I'm not really sure if you want robins eating your jelly because they're very territorial. They will maybe hoard the jelly. So if you find robins at your jelly, you might just want to put a different feeder in another location so that they can't dominate both. The scarlet and the summer tanager, this is the summer and that's the scarlet. They'll eat your jelly as well. Your house finches, anybody has house finches? It's kind of nice to put your jelly feeder out early and have the house finches at it because when the Orioles fly over and they see any birds at it, that shows them it's a safe feeder and there's something good there to eat. So I would not hesitate to put your feeders out right now because they're on their way. We probably talked about most of this. They will eat jelly, mealworms, orange suet, oranges, caterpillars, beetles, ants, spiders, snails, and nectar. We don't sell beetles, ants, spiders, or snails or caterpillars, but we sell the rest of the stuff. Their sound is so beautiful. It's almost every time, I can always tell when the first time I go outside and hear their sound, it's like immediately I know that it's them. They have such a clear flute-like whistling. It's really interesting. So the male does bring the female nesting material as part of the courtship. Each Oriole call is distinct, and that's why a male can show up here, and the female can be hours behind him, but she will show up and find the yard that he's in because he has a distinct call for her. Takes 12 days for females to build a nest. That's 40 hours, 10,000 stitches, thousands of knots tied with the beak. And I think this is interesting. Before the automobile Oriole nests were exclusively made from horsehair because there were a lot of horses around. And this one does have a lot of horsehair in it. We have people who have horses that live across the street from us. But today it's mostly plant fiber. And they lay 4 to 5 eggs, and the oldest Oriole was 12 years. They usually live up to 11 years, which they far outlive the hummingbird. That was interesting. And I think we talked about all of this stuff already, what to feed them and why and how. These are pictures in my yard. I love that. All right, so that is the end of my Oriole and hummingbird talk. I am absolutely going to be open for questions. I just don't know if I should do that before or after Janelle. After? Okay, so Janelle's going to talk, and then I'm going to stay right here so I can answer any questions and think about all the things I forgot to tell you. All right.
Yeah, I just gonna drive. Just use this.
This is for Facebook.
Okay.
You're good with that.
Okay, could you advance the slide, please? All right. I don't need this one. Okay. Oh, hummingbirds. Okay, this is just a 5-minute presentation.
Talk to them. That was only working for Facebook.
Oh, okay. Okay, sorry about that. Sorry, my hands are full, so that's why AJ's driving. This is just a 5-minute presentation on everything Crinda just talked about. It's all about attraction. So how do we get more hummingbirds into our yards? That's the benefits of using plants along with your feeders. They're entirely complementary. They're not competitive because your hummingbirds will be competitive. They're bullies. They can be. So next slide, please. What plants attract hummingbirds? Bright blooms. Red, purple, and pink are their favorites. As you see in the slides that I'm going to show you in a couple moments, that's not exclusive. Tubular shapes. They have long bills. That's what they like to drink out of and get the nectar. The most important part, I think, is the plentiful nectar. Hummingbirds really couldn't care the color. They couldn't care the shape as long as they get their food. They consume their full body weight each day. One study described a 3-gram hummingbird drinking 43 grams of sugar water. That's 14 times its body weight. The frequency is a hummingbird will need to feed 5 to 8 times per hour. Plenty of feeders and plants are needed to meet this need. Next slide. Okay, here are some of my favorites. Annuals, plant beds, planters, hanging pots, or vines on trellises to accommodate your feeders. This is really neat because you can have hummingbird feeders above, plants below, hanging plants above, hummingbird feeders, wherever. They really do complement each other. Read the directions on your packet or on your plant to make sure you have annuals for all season. These are 2 of my favorites. That one there is Pentas. That's in every garden, easy to find, every nursery this spring. They absolutely love them. They last all season long. This one here, I have a packet of it here. It's called Cardinal Climber. It's also known as cypress vine. Blooms very late in the season. Honest to goodness, I went out in my garden and I was just doing some gardening and I had all this stuff in my hair. I thought I ran into a bee's nest or a wasp's nest. It literally was hummingbirds all over this plant, which is the cypress vine or the cardinal vine, late September, early October. So that's when the blooms late while they can enjoy those all seasons. So there's a handout for you after this presentation up at the register for you, going over all the annual plants that you might want to try. Next slide. Perennials and shrubs. The key benefit is here is your long-term perennials or yearly support. Annuals, you plant season to season. Perennials, yearly support. Many native species are perfect hummingbird specimens. Perennial plants, shrubs, and trees are their homes. As Crinda was saying, there's a hummingbird nest. Their nests are typically 10 to 90 feet high. She went over all the fibers, lichen, leaves, everything that they use. They're so small, they're nearly impossible to find. And what's cool about them is they're elastic. They plant their little navy beans, which are the eggs, into the little nest, and it expands as the hummingbirds grow. So, could you go back? This here is a native plant called a, hoary vervain. That is a bee balm, and there's a nest. Next slide, please. And here are some 4 of the wild bird favorites. Columbine, agastache, also known as hyssop, Liatris, baptisia, common milkweed. There's many different milkweeds. Joe Pye weed, hoary vervain, penstemon, which is also known as gay feather or beard tongue, cardinal flower, commonly known as lobelia, catmint, prairie phlox, coneflower, viburnum, hoary skullcap, and bee balm. These are all natives. We have pictured there a liatris with a hummingbird on it. There is a columbine in the corner, and there's a common milkweed. So you see the varieties of colors, and they're tubular, and they all provide a lot of nectar. Next slide, please. Oh, okay. I'm just going to say, just go back till we get to the announcements so we don't read behind. Sorry about that, AJ. Anyway, a lot of these native plants, you may have heard me if you've been at other locations, or excuse me, other talks that outside of our location, all the way around, we have a lot of these native plants planted. So you will get to see these plants as they come up and bloom right out in that green space there. And next week, just kind of going on with our theme of providing education in nature, we're having a talk on native bees and, essential bugs, really beneficial bugs for your yard. Jody Green, does anybody, she's from UNL, the UNL extension, does anybody happen to watch Backyard Farmer? She's also on that too. So it's going to be exciting talk next week. And we're also going to feature some of these plants in seed form from Prairie Legacy, which is a locally sourced nursery here, and also 7 flats of live plants for you guys to purchase and take home that night. So I hope you all can make it to that. And that's next week, which is the 23rd, 6 o'clock. That's our event. We have 2 events a month that we're kind of planning. That's our second event for April. And you register the same way, go to our website and go under the events tab and go from there. And hopefully we'll see you next week for that. So anyway, I'm going to turn it back to Crinda for questions and answers. Thank you.
Did I forget anything? Oh, thanks. Why would I keep them absolutely? Get rid of it. And we shares the doubt. Okay, so I am ready for any questions that you might have. And I will also be available after we're done talking here. Just you guys can shop or you guys can hang out, you can leave. But if you have questions outside of us doing the Q&A right now, I'm here to answer those afterwards as well. Need that. So I just wanted to say, yeah, we'll do that. I guess we'll do that right at the end. Go ahead. And if you don't want to use a microphone, you can just ask the question and I'll repeat. Well, I'll repeat the question back if you don't want to use it. Yes. Yes. I think, so the question is, hummingbirds come back to the same yards that they've gone to before, and what if they were attracted to your yard by plants and the plants are no longer there? At that point, I would say they'll still come back. They'll be looking for food, and if you had a feeder out there, they probably would stay, because I will tell you, when I first started attracting hummingbirds, I can't keep anything alive. I will buy 2 fuchsia hanging plants a year, and I'll hang them next to my 2 hummingbird feeders, and that's about the extent of what I have in my yard that will attract them from a plant perspective. So I do think they'll come back because they're used to coming back. And if they see there's no flowers or no plants there anymore, if you have nectar out, they might stay. Otherwise, I might just do a couple of hanging baskets because I don't do anything more than that. And they stay for me without all the other stuff in the yard. Does that answer that? Yeah. Okay. Any more questions? Yes. I think it's so the question is, what is the purpose of boiling the water for hummingbird nectar? I believe it's for purification. I think it's just in case the water is, they say that if you use these, you do not have to boil the water. And that it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but they tell me that they say a lot of the times you might not even need to boil the water. I think they have you do it just in case there's something wrong with your water that would be detrimental to the hummingbird. It purifies it. I would think that would be fine, yes. If you have a water purification system already, that should be perfectly fine. I don't know. I think that if you never boiled your water, it might be okay. It might just, your nectar might go bad faster. It might not be as pure.
Okay, now
Oh,
location.
oh,
Shady, sunny, and can you push them close to your hummingbird?
yes. So I would say the question is location, shady, sunny, or by other bird feeders. I put mine in with all my other bird feeders, and I have them outside of my other bird feeders because I have two or three that I put out, and I try to hide them from each other. So shady is amazing, and it will keep your nectar from going bad faster. But I would only do shaded if you already have hummingbirds that come to your yard and they know where to find the food. If you're trying to attract the hummingbirds, I wouldn't necessarily shade them unless you're shading them with something that's big and red, and they'll see the red and then come and figure out what's underneath it. But hiding a bunch of hummingbird feeders around your yard to where when the hummers fly over, they don't see any red, I think that they might just bypass your yard unless you have the flowers out there. Um, Out in the sun, the only real detriment to the sun is it just ages the nectar faster. You'll start to see it go from clear to a little bit cloudy, and it might be okay still cloudy, but it's just a quick trip over to moldy and gross. So I typically say put it out in the open, out in the sun. Once you attract them, you can kind of move them back. You can kind of shade them at that point. That's how I feel. And I think we had, yes.
Tell speaking and about the what is the benefit of the aesthetics of the coming to your backyard spreading face?
What is the benefit to having them come to your yard? Okay, as far as I know, they are great pollinators, so they'll pollinate, especially if you have plants in your yard, obviously. I That has to be it. I mean, Janelle, do you have a deeper answer to that? They're pollinators. She's the plant girl. I can't keep the plants alive in my yard for them. What is the benefit to having hummingbirds in your yard besides just having them come to your nectar feeder? As far as pollinating, and are they beneficial to having bugs in our? I mean, is it that they get rid of bugs?
Do they
Okay.
coming in we ever nail that one make clear?
I had that in my notes that they were. So it says flowers are the main food source, and the hummingbirds play an important role in pollination by pollinating thousands of different plants, including wildflowers, that can stabilize fragile soil after fires and landslides. So that would be something I'd have to get more information on. That is something I added new this year to this because I had not heard the benefits as far as that was concerned, especially the landslides and the fires. So it is beneficial. But that will be in my notes to figure out for next time. Any more? And if you don't want to ask it in this format, you can always ask one of us afterwards.
Well, does the jelly from the Oriole for the hummingbird? Because I did read that hummingbird shouldn't have jelly.
Well, in my opinion, I think the big thing that they talk about with the jelly and the hummingbirds is that hummingbirds are I've seen hummingbirds come to my jelly when it's been washed out, when there's rainwater in it, so it's a little more liquidy, and they're in there sucking up the liquid jelly, basically. I think what I have heard is bad for them in that respect is high fructose corn syrup, and that can be in the jelly. It's not in this jelly, but I also understand this jelly is pricey. And then the stickiness, the hummingbird happens to get stuck in the jelly. That could be, I mean, I've seen that happen before, Wildlife Rehab did a great job of unsticking them, and he did great after that. So I would say the two reasons that jelly might not be good for the hummingbirds is most of the time you're putting jelly out, it's got high fructose corn syrup in it. And I've heard, and I should probably mention when you're using nectar for your hummingbirds to never use any fake sugars, always just pure cane sugar. No honey, no, I didn't mean fake. Any like no honey, no stevia, things like that, just pure cane sugar, and preferably probably not high fructose corn syrup. So thank you for that. Yes.
Way you can now here is having a shepherd hook because you can't put it. I'd like to put it under a branch of a tree and then shade in. There's a tree out right beside my door, but they're not going to see the orange, red.
Right. So when people have, like, the only place they have to hang a feeder, so the question is really the only place to hang a feeder is underneath, because she's saying, can you not put it in a tree? But that would shade it. If you're going to hang just say you're hanging this here, just say this is your hummingbird feeder and it's under a tree, or say that's the tree, and you want the hummingbirds to come down and find that, then out here in the open, I would put something with a red scarf on it. I would put something that's red that has them stop to visit that. And then once it's low enough, it will see that. So I have had people do that before where they're like, I'm not putting it out. I'm not putting it out in the sun. I'm not. And so I said, okay, let's try putting a stop sign in the yard. And when they come to the stop sign, then they'll see that red as well.
I mean, like once the birds.
No, once you attract them, you won't need the stop sign is what I call it. You won't have to keep that out. Yes, yes. I would say if you're wanting to shade your nectar, I would try to use something that's red. If you have something at home that's silver, I would tie something red to it just to kind of lure them down. I thought the best idea that somebody came up with was they zip tied just a huge bouquet of fake flowers right there. I can't kill fake flowers. Okay, do we have any more questions? Yes.
They come in the spring.
Yes.
April.
Yes, I should have told you when they leave.
So they'll come in spring and then later.
Yes.
So stay then.
Yes. So in my opinion, what I've heard just over the years working here is that I would say about 30%, maybe 30% of our customers get them from May 1st to October 1st and keep them that whole time. I would say about the other 70% will see them kind of coming through in May, but they'll keep going, and then they'll see more in end of July, all of August, all of September, because they're slow migrators back. So you'll have quite a bit of activity in your yard, but they won't necessarily stay, if that makes sense. So, but they will. So if you get frustrated, you're not seeing them in May, June, July. I always tell people you can put your feeders away, but bring them back out in August, at least all of August, all of September. You should see something. And if you happen to have it out in August and September, but they didn't stay with you from May, you could get a new one that might remember your yard for the next year that they come back. So thank you. Good. You what?
Two boys and two girls eat their crab.
Oh,
Son, $278,000 FG looks, smell, premium. I've probably hired 10 detail guys in my life, and Pierce is by far and away the best detailer I've ever had. It's incredible, and
yeah.
the
He's-
detailed way cheaper than an income.
He is very particular about a car detail. Well, the van's right outside. Yeah, you might as well shamelessly plug the eggs that we get from our daughter as well. My daughter has 75 chickens, and so we have a lot of beautiful farm fresh eggs that we sell here as well. So no, but I will tell you, my son-in-law told me that we sell probably 25 dozen a month, or no, a week. A what? Oh my gosh, 25 dozen a week or so. And he takes all of the money from that and buys Bitcoin with it. So there you go. I don't know what that all means, but he likes it. He says, just keep them coming. I'm just going to keep investing in Bitcoin. Okay, so welcome to our new location. We've launched a brand new website. Make sure to follow us on social media if you want to know more about events in the future. We're always putting educational videos out there, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat. And now we're going to stay open for the next 30 minutes for in-person shopping. Enjoy 20% off everything in the store tonight, except for our big bags in the very back that you won't even see. So, but thank you. And anybody that's here working can answer any of your questions.